Good morning. Driving around the backwoods of Texas, a little two-lane road, and I came across out in the field. I see this white building. It's about 25, 30 feet in diameter. It's actually round, a little concave at the top, little cone shape. It's got what looks like a pointy white telephone pole popping out of the roof, and that got me thinking. Here we go again. That is a non-directional beacon. It is the original navigation aid from the 1930s, early 1930s for aviation. And it gave out a code. If you dialed it up on your automatic direction finder, the equipment you'd have in your aircraft, it would give off a 3 or 4 digit code. It would kind of go dee-dee-dee-dee. You could make sure you had the right one dialed up, and it would say it's that way. And then you could dial up one over here, and you could have two, and you could cross them, triangulate, and say, okay, I'm right here. It's very primitive. It's, again, the original. Since then, other electronic navigation came up, LORAN and distant measuring equipment, blah, blah, blah. It's all pretty much gone, all of it, because it's not all GPS. I think in the 1990s, the feds announced they're no longer going to maintain the units. They're not going to actually tear them down. They just aren't going to work on them anymore. And that's where you are today. They're still there. They don't function anymore. And I'm guessing maybe somebody turned them into a barn or something. But back in the day, when those were operational, they transmitted on the AM frequency. So they shared that frequency band, and you could fly along in your airplane. You could play with your ADF, and you could dial up an AM radio station and listen to it flying around. Now, to totally change gears, back in the 1930s, if you bought a car, a loaded down deluxe model of a car would literally say in the ad, heater and radio. That was considered fancy schmancy back in the day. There was a guy stationed in Honolulu in the Army. His first name was Kermit, and for the life of me, I can't remember his last name. He was a second lieutenant, and he went to buy a car, and the car he wanted wasn't available. So he ended up getting a different one that had the oh-so-important and very valuable radio in it. And he was in charge of some kind of aviation aspect of acquisitions because the Japanese were getting kind of aggressive in the South Pacific, so the U.S. Navy repositioned the entire fleet from San Diego to Honolulu the year previously. And he was in the aviation part of that. And he had known about the AM radio station, and the ADF could tune in the same transmission from the non-directional beacon. But back then, and this was actually in effect when I was a kid, radio stations went off the air at midnight. They would literally say, "This ends our broadcast day," and they'd go to fuzz. They apparently did not have a non-directional beacon in Hawaii at the time, because they didn't have aviation really there until the Navy and the Army showed up. So when they would move a large aircraft from the States over the rather large expanse of water for the last part of the trip, they would follow the radio station in, but they came in during the night, so the military would ask the radio station to stay on the air to give them a beacon to follow in the dark, because it depends on what time they get there. And Lieutenant Kermit, knew this, so he gets in his car that coincidentally has a radio, and he gets in at 5 in the morning, turns his car on, boom, the radio station's on, which tells him there's aircraft coming in. He drives up, goes to work, walks in. A few minutes later, gets a phone call. There is an experimental radar station on top of a mountain they're playing with. And the guy says, hey, we're picking up, something coming in from the north. And he knows that the aircraft's coming in because the radio station's on, and the aircraft comes from the north. And he says, yeah, that's good. We're good to go. And that was the attack on Pearl Harbor. The series of coincidences that need to happen for him not to react to that all fell in place. And imagine how different the world would have been with a 2-hour warning. The attack, they could have responded a little differently. But that's the damage, all those things happening. The car just happened to have the radio, and the radio station was on, and he happened to know why, and he was in charge of that, and they were coming in literally like within 2 or 3 degrees of the heading that the mainland aircraft came in for. It was all happened at once for that event to happen. And that's what popped into my head today, just driving along and peeking over and seeing that NDB, and it took me all the way around in a circle, and I started thinking about that. Well, that's it for today. I'll catch up with you guys later.